Yo, what is up, everyone? Got a ranged DPS Mythic Plus tier list for 10.1.7 for y'all today. I'm going to give you my opinion on what specs are meta right now, what's performing really well, what isn't performing so well. This is going to be based off of my opinion, though, with plugging Mythic Plus up to plus 20 keys by either playing some of these specs or playing with them, watching some high-level gameplay for a lot of these specs, looking into Raider IO score, and just what they bring to the table. Part of the reason some of these specs might be ranked so high isn't because of their tuning, but it's because of how well they complement the other insane specs in the game right now, and just how useful they are in the dungeons this season. I always encourage you to play what you want, though, no matter how the spec is performing, and if you know the dungeons and specialization really well, every single one of these specs can do up to plus 22, plus 23, plus 24 keys, and I mean that. It just might be a little bit more difficult than some of these specs, and we all know how getting into a group can be, how difficult that can be in Mythic Plus, and if you're plugging, might be difficult as hell if you are not playing a couple of these specializations. If you guys are new to my tier list, I'll explain the rankings real quick. We got God tier here. These are the best specs in the game. We're seeing them perform at the highest level. They have hardly any weaknesses, and they're probably overtuned. They need to be tuned down. S, these specs are fantastic. They're performing very well, maybe have some slight weaknesses, but overall, they're what you're going to bring is filler spots or your main spots in your Mythic Plus team. You're seeing them perform some of the highest keys in the entire game. A, still in a great spot, still performing very well, pushing some really high keys, might have some clear weaknesses in maybe specific dungeons or don't complement the meta, the other meta specs as well. B is pretty good overall. We see some clear weaknesses compared to specs like in S or God tier, even A tier, whether that's, you know, AoE damage, single target damage, utility they bring in, or just clear weaknesses. C, probably needs some tuning to be brought up this other level. I would say B and higher is probably healthy for the game. C probably needs something to change, some kind of buffs, maybe a rework, something like that. Trash, definitely need a rework or some crazy tuning to be brought up to this level. I don't think there are any trash specs in the game right now, which I think is awesome. What I've seen a lot in the past, like in the past history of WoW, there's been definitely some trash specializations. I do not think that is the case this season. Thank you. All right, let's start off with a couple of banger specializations right now. Let's go with Devastation Evoker. Devastation is for sure going to A tier. I think they're performing really well. They're overshadowed by Augmentation right now, as you guys probably know if you're playing Mythic Plus at almost at any level, honestly. But Devastation is performing very well. Obviously, for both Augmentation and Devastation, you've got Zephyr, Renewing Blaze, Blessing of the Bronze, Rescue, you've got a Knock Up, Knock Back, you got a Root, you got a Group Stun, you got Bleed Dispel, you have great mobility, and you bring Bloodlust. You are insane. Devastation is performing very well overall. Again, I think they're just overshadowed by Augmentation and how they're performing and how Augmentation is basically buffing every other specialization in the game, and specifically some certain ones that are just making them even better as well, specifically like Shadow. Devastation is performing very well. If you guys don't need an Augmentation or anything like that, or if you're just trying to have fun with some friends, some guild members, or anything like that, you like Devastation, I highly suggest playing it. It's a very fun specialization, and it's performing really good. Augmentation, I'm gonna put honestly, I think I'm gonna put in God tier because I think it needs tuning. I think even after it's had multiple tuning, I think this is like third or fourth time they've had tuning. They're insane, guys. You bring everything I just mentioned for Devastation, obviously, but you also have like a battle shout for the group to keep your team alive, and that's on a short cooldown. You got a huge DPS increase for a lot of certain specs that just make them insanely broken. We've seen this obviously with Fire Mage. And Shadow Priest, still is with Shadow Priest. They bring a lot of armor buff for your tank, for your group overall. They even bring mana regen for your healer. They're insanely OP. They still are. I really think that they need a rework. I think they're a fun specialization. I don't want Augmentation to go anywhere. I want it to stay, but I think it needs some tuning or rework or something because it is still breaking the game right now in Raid, in Mythic Plus, and I would like to see that change, especially on the higher end. Even if I'm not playing that, it's ridiculous when you're seeing people in like plus 12, plus 13, plus 14 keys that are requiring Augmentation Evoker, and that's still happening even after the nerfs. So I'd like to see this change. I like for Devastation to probably be, I think this spec even could be debating maybe S tier, but we're not seeing it played hardly at all because of Augmentation. But I still stand Augmentation. I think it needs tuned for sure. Let's go Shadow Priest, guys. I'm going to actually put this in S tier, okay? High S tier. I do not think that it needs to be nerfed anymore. It's been nerfed multiple times. I do not think their damage is OP. I think it just complements the Augmentation Evoker very well, and Guardian Druid and Paladin. Obviously, for a lot of the dungeons, Mass Dispel you need for a lot of encounters. If you're not bringing some Discipline Priest or Holy Priest, probably Disc Priest in this, and because Disc is performing really well, you're bringing a Shadow Priest because you need Mass Dispel. They have nerfed that in some dungeons, which I think is really good, but it just hurts the routes at this point. They've nerfed the dungeons as well overall, but I still think this spec is performing really well. I don't think you need to nerf the damage at all. I think you just need to change how the dungeons perform. I don't think they'll do it probably for the end of the season. But hopefully next season we'll see that you don't, Mass Dispel isn't required, Mind Soothe isn't required. But Shadow Priest is just really good. You still have Power Infusion, you're bringing a Stamina buff, you've got Shackle for Incorporeal, you got Mass Dispel, Mind Soothe, those are both so OP. Oh my gosh. You have an AoE Fear kind of CC. You've got Leap of Faith, which can really help out. You got okay-ish mobility, but your damage toolkit for a single target is pretty damn good, and your AoE is still pretty damn good, even after the nerfs. I think they belong in S tier, for sure. Let's hit Balanced Druid up. I'm putting Balanced Druid in A for sure. I'm going to put it actually above Devastation. I think Balanced Druid is performing very, very well. Again, I think it's overshadowed by Guardian Druid right now, but you're still bringing Mark of the Wild, Battle Res, you got Stampeding Roar, you got Root with Ursul's Vortex, you've got a Knockback, you got Incapacitating Roar if you need, Hibernate for Incorporeals, good mobility, you've got Soothe, you have a Cleanse for Afflicted. You just can help your team out in so many different ways. But they're performing very, very well in both single target and AoE. I think the rotation is rather simple. I'm not saying that there's a high skill ceiling for it, because I think there is. But I think that you could perform pretty well with Balanced Druid. It isn't overly complicated once you get it down. I love Balanced Druid. I played a lot of keys with it throughout this season, the last season, the season before that. I love Balanced Druid for a long time. But I think it's performing really well. I like where it's at right now. I wouldn't say it's too OP. I'd say it's just in a good spot. It's got good survivability. Honestly, if we see Guardian Druid nerfed more, I can see Balance rising up a lot. Maybe Resto Druid, but I think Balance is in a great spot. I could see how we'd see that even move up. Maybe even S here, but I think they would need some tuning to be brought up to that higher level. Next up, let's go Ellie Shaman. Okay, some of you guys might be a little surprised by this, but I'm actually going to put this right below Balanced Druid. Ellie Shaman is performing really well. If you guys look at Radar.io, they're performing insanely well. Obviously, we're not seeing them in the highest keys being completed right now. Just because I think part of Augmentation, how they work, and Shadow Priest, and I think you're probably bringing Enhance over an Ellie Shaman. But they're freaking good. You got Quick Interrupts, you got Bloodlust, you have AoE Stun, you got a Knock Up, you got Group Healing with Ancestral Guidance, even though it was nerfed. You got Reincarn, which is incredibly OP in a lot of scenarios. You've got Cleanse for Afflicted. You can help out with Incorporeals. There's just a lot that you bring to the table. Your damage toolkit is very fun. I mean, with my keys that I've been doing lately, the 17s, 18s, 19s, something like that. I played a couple Ellie Shamans, and they are freaking pumping. They're insane. I haven't played mine since Season 1 of Dragon. Actually, I played a little bit in this season, but mostly in Season 1. And, man, they were really fun. And then going into this season, I knew they were going to be good just because of their tier set. They're in a great spot, guys. Honestly, if you like Ellie Shaman, I highly suggest playing them. They're a fun specialization, and they're performing really freaking well. I'm gonna go with let's go with the Warlocks next. Let's go with Demonology. We're gonna put an A tier. Okay, I think Demonology is performing actually really well. Again, this is the one season I think I haven't seen Warlocks doing the highest keys in a long time, at least in my most recent history. So for all the Warlocks, right, you're super tanky. You've got Gateway, which is really nice. You got Hellstones, which is incredibly OP, especially if you're pushing high-end content or you're struggling to survive on certain weeks. Maybe that's Tyrannical or Fortified. But the Hellstones come in clutch. You got Curses, which are really handy if you use them well. You've got Battle Res. You just have so much utility that you bring to your team. Very helpful throughout the whole dungeon. There's some little cheese things you can do with your Gateway too, but they're just really tanky. They survive through a lot of high damaging things on Tyrant weeks or Fortified weeks. They're great things to bring. I love their AoE stun that they bring. It sucks they can't help with Afflicted, but I think they can basically solo Incorporeals. It's freaking awesome. All three Warlocks can. It's amazing. Their toolkit is really good. I think that single target, they're insane. Like, insane. They're performing so freaking well. I think their AoE is really good too. But I really, what I've seen so far from the gameplay I've watched, a little bit of me playing it, and, you know, my wife mains Demonology Warlock. She loves it so much. But just playing with other Demonology Warlocks too, your single target's cracked. It is insane. So I'm gonna put A tier, like a high mid A tier. We're gonna go with Destruction next. Destruction belongs in A tier, and I think it is performing better than Demonology. I think it's just single target and AoE is better overall, especially if you have a tank that knows how to play around a Destruction Warlock with standing still a little bit more. Demo's, shines with mobility, but or moving around in fights if you need to. But Destruction, if you can stand still though, you will pump. You'll do more damage than Demonology, single target and AoE for sure. You still bring all the same utility. They're performing insane. I think they belong in A tier without a doubt. Affliction. Okay, Affliction, I don't, actually, I've played with some Affliction Warlocks actually recently on a couple of my alts, and they're actually performing not that bad, but I think they belong in C tier. I think I just can't compare them to a couple of specializations we've got in B tier right now. In terms of overall damage, and in terms of Raider IL2, they're the weakest performing one by a lot, which is crazy to see still, because I don't think they're that weak. I just think they could see some, I would like to see some buffs, probably some tuning changes to bring up. I think actually next season we might see them rise up. I think they might be sleeper OP. So keep an eye out for that. But Affliction Warlock is my favorite specialization for Warlock by far. It's a ton of fun. But I do think they're lacking. Again, I still think you can push up to plus 22, plus 23, plus 24 keys, probably even higher, especially if you're not pugging. But it will be very difficult to probably get into keys as Affliction Warlock, at least from what I've seen and in my experience, for sure. Let's go mages next, okay? Fire Mage. Fire Mage is really freaking good, okay? I'm putting it high A tier. It's the highest A tier spec for me. Guys, okay, so all three mages, you bring in Bloodlust, right? You've got AoE CC, you've got Slows, you've got Root, you've got Poly for Incorporeal, you've got Curse to Spell for Afflicted, you've got Spell Steal, which is insanely OP if you know how to use it. With all the rework, all mage specs are getting, like, they've got mass barrier for their group. They've got mass invisibility if they're a group, if you're talented. But the mass barrier alone, the ice block, you don't actually have to use. It just puts a freaking damage reduction on you. But was it 70%, 80%? It's insanely OP. You're so tanky. I feel like I've been doing the 0 to hero challenge on my rogue, sub rogue. I feel like I can do a lot on him, on her, and that's why it's so much fun. But on my fire mage, or on my mage, it feels the same. It feels the exact same. I feel like I can do so much myself. I like that. I like being able to deal with incorporeals. I like being able to deal with the afflicted. I mean, if I'm out cleansing everybody else with the afflicted, I'm CCing the incorporeals, dude. It feels awesome. Just in terms of utility, all the mage specs are amazing. If you like to be a specialization that can do everything, mage is definitely for you. And I think with the rework, it's incredible. But talking about Fire Mage specifically, Fire Mage is still performing really well. They've gotten nerfed like 4 or 5 times, and they're still freaking good. They're still completing some of the highest keys in the game right now. I think the nerfs were felt for sure, though. You definitely can see it in damage meters, and with augmentation, they're not performing as well. They're still performing well. I just think augmentation could take some other specs right now that would actually be even better for the group comp instead of Fire Mage. But I think it belongs in high A tier. It's still performing very, very well if you know how to play it in single target and AoE. Especially since their rework. It's fun to play. It's very engaging. I think it has an incredibly high skill ceiling. I know not everybody agrees with me there, but I do think the Fire has an incredibly high skill ceiling. But if you get it down, I mean, you are going to go crazy. It belongs in the highest A tier, in my opinion. We're going to go Frost Mage next. I think Frost Mage is actually going second to highest A tier. I think it's right around with Boomy, actually. Right around here. Frost Mage is really freaking good. They received the nerf, I think, one set of nerfs here recently. Still, you're bringing all this utility to your team. You've also got slows, which a couple dungeons, specifically Under Rot, is really helpful. Oldemon really helpful. There's just some certain mobs, especially on fortified weeks, that it makes it incredibly difficult to deal with. But if you have a Frost Mage, you basically have a permanent slow. It's insane. Seriously. Oh, Netharian's Lair. There's literally 3 dungeons that I can think of, maybe even 4. No, Brackenhide. Oh yeah, so Brackenhide, Oldemon, Netharian's Lair, Under Rot. All 4 of those keys, Frost Mage, are huge. Literally huge. You have all the utility you normally bring and then a permanent slow. It's incredible. You're doing really good AoE damage. You do really good single target damage. You just bring a lot. Like, it does everything that Balance is doing, honestly. I think you, even with the survivability, like, these guys are very similar in my mind right here. You just have a permanent slow here. It's freaking insane. I love it so much. You have AoE CC. You've got multiple AoE CCs. If you think about it, you have Roots. You've got, I mean, literally incredible. Both these specializations are, but I think Frost and Fire both deserve the top of A tier specializations right now, in my opinion. There's a lot of specs in A tier right now, and I love that for the healthiness of the game. Honestly, if they just bring down augmentation, I think we could see some of these specs rise up too. So next up, let's go. Oh, Arcane. I lied. Arcane. I'm putting in B tier. High B tier, maybe low A tier. I think it's sleeper OP. I just don't think people are playing it as much as Frost and Fire, just because I think they are still performing better than Arcane. Arcane is insane right now, though. Very insane. Single target, I've been seeing them blow up. AoE, I've been seeing them blow up. Their new tier set was incredible, especially with their rework. It works so well together. It's really, really fun. I've only dabbled in it a little bit in some like plus 14, plus 15 keys, but it was incredibly fun to do. Any Arcane Mages out there, let me know your comments. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of the specialization right now. But I think it's performing really well. I still think high B tier, again, plus 23, plus 24, plus 25 keys. If you know what you're doing, and just from the utility you bring, I think you could even bring up to higher keys. But in terms of damage overall, I think compared to these other two specializations, I don't think they're at that same level right now, going into 10.1.7. All right, let's go up. Next one, next couple are hunters. Let's do Beast Mastery first. Putting Beast Mastery in B tier. Okay, no, I lied. I think I'm gonna put it. Yeah, I'm putting it low A. I'm putting it low A. Okay, so I think it's pretty close to Arcane. I think it's slightly overperforming, but I think it's just because it's so simple. Okay, and you have a lot of utility. Again, you're bringing you got Misdirection, you got Freeze Trap, which is really nice in a lot of scenarios, especially Freehold. I really like it, especially for last boss. It's incredible. You got Bloodlust, you got Binding Shot, Sentinel Owl, which is good in niche situations. You do pretty damn good DPS overall, but you like both AoE and single target. This works for both specializations I'm going to talk about, but they do really good. I just think what's holding back Hunter right now is their survivability. When you start to get to a higher point on these dungeons, you are not, you're going to die. You'll just fall over. Your cooldowns are on too long, your defensive cooldowns are on too long of a cooldown to be able to use. They need to add some more into it. They need to reduce the cool, if they half their cooldown, just some PvE content. Don't worry about PvP. PvE content or Mythic Plus, it would make them so much better. Their Shell, their Feign Death, their Healing, Exhilaration. I'm not kidding. But they're easy to play, easy to pick up, even perform at a higher level. I think you can do some crazy good damage with both single target and AoE, especially if you keep your stacks up, your barb shot stacks. They're really fun. I've been playing a lot of mine lately, and I think they're doing very well. I think you can perform some really high keys. I've seen plus 24, plus 25 keys on them. They're fun. They're incredibly fun. I know there's a lot of Beast Mastery Hunter out there, so if you guys enjoy Beast Mastery Hunter, play it right now. It's in a good spot. I mean that. And they received some tuning recently, which helped out a lot. Marksmanship, I'm putting beats here. I'm putting right here with Arcane, but I think Arcane's better. I think Arcane edges it out. I think Marksmanship got a couple buffs here in the last couple months. They're performing really good. Again, you have all the same utility I mentioned for Beast Mastery, right? But they need better survivability. They've got good AoE damage, like incredible AoE damage if you perform it well, and single target damage. I think it's harder than Beast Mastery Hunter to perform well as marksmanship. But I still think that overall the specialization is pretty damn good. Belongs to spot in B, definitely above Affliction. Okay, and I don't think again these specs are bad. I just think I see these other A specs, especially S tier and God tier specs. They're above Arcane and marksmanship in my opinion right now. But I think they're in a good spot. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts down below if you agree or disagree with me. I think this is a pretty accurate representation of where the specs land right now as range DPS going into 10.1.7. I'm excited to see how it changes over the course of the last quarter of this season. I guess you could say half of this season. No, quarter of the season. Oh my gosh, we're almost into the third season. I'm so excited for that. I'm very curious to see how these will play out as the season continues and going into 10.1.2. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like the video, and consider hitting that subscribe button. We got WoW content coming out all the time and more MMORPG content coming out as well. Thank you guys. Catch you in the next one. Peace.